Three Houses is making waves for Fire Emblem. Actually, that's like calling Felicia kind of clumsy. In July, Fire Emblem Three Houses was released to rapturous reception, thrusting Fire Emblem back into the spotlight, and is now breaking records like Homegirl breaks plates. On course to become the best-selling game in the series, 3 routes down and over 260 hours in, it's one of the most unique Fire Emblem experiences I've ever played. Two of my biggest takeaways from Three Houses are how it manages to bring together, and please, a somewhat divisive fanbase, and the way it establishes its own identity within the series. Though longtime fans will probably agree, that's pretty much par for the course in Fire Emblem. Every game is someone's favourite, and that's not just nostalgia. Sure, the series has its tropes and traditions, but in terms of direction, almost every game has some trait or concept lending it a unique appeal from the rest, which in the marketing world, they call a USP, or unique selling point. Today, I'm going to put my Switch down for a little while, look back a bit, and discuss the unique selling points of each Fire Emblem. What really made, or makes, each Fire Emblem stand out from the rest and attract its fans. This'll be from both a player and marketing perspective, so let's keep it simple. Think big. In the interest of brevity, I may pass over some things as well. That said, feel free to tell me about anything you'd add in the comments below, especially since I haven't finished every non-localized game yet, so I'm kind of looking from the outside in certain cases. Now, where better to start than at the beginning?
Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light!
As the granddaddy of the series, FE1 naturally lacks a unique appeal from the rest, besides archaic charm. Instead, let's discuss how it stood out from other games of its ilk at the time. Series creator, Shozo Kaga, explained his vision in a 1990 developer interview. I call it role-playing simulation. It's a new genre. Basically, it's a strategy game. But strategy games typically are kind of hardcore and dry. You only care about winning or losing the battle, and there's no space for the player to empathize with the characters or story. By adding RPG elements, I wanted to create a game where the player could get more emotionally invested in what's happening. Conversely, one of the drawbacks of RPGs is that there's always just a single protagonist. Thus, to a certain extent, you can only experience the linear story that the game creator has prepared for you. I wanted to create a game where the story and game will develop differently for each player depending on the units they use. Thus, I added the strategy elements and arrived at this hybrid system. Permadeath was the crux of this. This was an RPG where if someone died, that was it. No revives or Phoenix Downs here. Combined with the emphasis on narrative and characterization, this incentivized survival. The humanization of your unit is bolstered by the RNG built into the level ups and combat, and having all the numbers laid out in front of you made the risks of play, the risks of war, more palpable. By hybridizing the strategic gameplay of Famicom Wars with the high fantasy of late 80s JRPGs, Shadow Dragon and the Blade of Light carved a new lane in the RPG market, and is considered a forebearer of the tactical RPG genre.
Gaiden!
Unlike FE1, Gaiden has no problem separating itself from the rest of the series, still being seen as a black sheep today. Gaiden's heavy RPG flavour shows in both its gameplay and increased story focus. Dungeon crawling, a world map, towns to explore, unlimited grinding, a revamped battle and promotion system, a squad of villagers that you can choose the promotions of, and a pair of lords. The story follows the separate paths of two new lords, Alm and Celica, as they seek to end the conflict between the warring Sophia and Rigel, leading each down a road of intrigue and tragedy. From part 3 on, you can largely swap between each path at will, adding a feeling of freedom to the gameplay. While several titles would take inspiration from Gaiden, its freeform gameplay and story structure are still avant-garde for the series today. The freedom and creativity oozing from its direction cement Gaiden as one of the most experimental, unique experiences Fire Emblem has to offer.
Mystery of the Emblem!
Mystery of the Emblem drops every gameplay innovation Gaiden made, instead refining the original's mechanics. This goes for the story too, which returns to Arcanea, with Book 1 retelling FE1's plot, and Book 2 continuing and concluding Moth's story. FE3's large-scale appeal lies in small-scale updates. Being on the SNES gave the appeal of seeing FE1 with the expected upgrade in visuals and audio, but beyond that, many features that would go on to become series standards were introduced, such as bond supports, which gave small combat boosts to compatible units when they were close by, and coloured tiles denoting movement spaces for you and the enemy. These create a more refined experience compared to FE1 and 2. FE3 is critically well received, and had the series' best first week sales till Awakening, and it makes sense why. It was a return to form after Gaiden, polishing up what FE1 began, and solidifying the series' trademark style moving forward. While updated years later, Mystery of the Emblem is extremely important to the history of the Emblem. Do I have to pay royalties for that?
Geneaology of the Holy War
is perhaps the series' most conceptually focused title. Its bold direction focuses on rich world building, political intrigue, character interaction, and using its open but eventful maps to portray a continent-spanning war. The story spans 2 generations, starring the Lord Sigurd of Chalfie and then his son Seliph. You can influence the second generation through the love system. Through special conversations during maps, units can marry and pass down their stats, skills, weapons, and potentially stat-boosting holy blood to their kids. This gives FE4 some of the greatest depth of planning and experimentation in the series, with the customizability of your pairings and kids immensely increasing replay value. Eugenics Emblem started here. Skills, introduced but barely present in Gaiden, are expanded here and help differentiate units, while the Holy Blood mechanic, which boosts the base stats and growths of its wielders to ludicrous proportions and allows some to use the also busted sacred weapons, invokes the feeling of having some real legendary warriors under your command, making it all the more thrilling when they go up against others on the enemy side. FE4's tone is another USP. Its shoujo-esque art style and the romance present give it a mature feel, while thematically, it tackles issues like religion, child hunts, patricide, and incest. Started here, folks. These intentionally archaic themes lend FE4's plot a sense of history, tragedy, and theatrical drama. Kaga said, "I wanted to try my hand at making a large-scale historical drama myself. Each character could stay being a character, but more than that, I wanted the history to be the protagonist. I had an urge to make a drama with a large-scale setting, in which you could feel the movement of such history. This philosophy paid dividends. Geneaology of the Holy War is a ludonarrative tour de force, delivering an epic tale through interactive storytelling."
Thracia 776
A mid-call to FE4, Thracia 776 further develops the tapestry of Yggdrasil's history. The last game Kaga worked on, Thracia had a lot of care and attention put into its development, specifically its difficulty. Widely considered the most difficult Fire Emblem, both for its tricky map design and its unforgiving and cryptic mechanics, it's often recommended to play Thracia with a guide on your first run. Seriously. A number of unique gameplay elements keep you on your toes, like Fog of War, the fatigue system, escape missions, the capture mechanic, and your healers being able to miss. Man, Kaga must have been better. It's not all painful though. The game also introduced branching maps and Gaiden chapters, allowing you greater control over your plot progress, and also rewarding good gameplay and encouraging repeat playthroughs. Sadly, just getting first playthroughs was hard enough. Thracia is currently the lowest selling game in the main series, though this can be partially attributed to the game's release date, releasing towards the back end of the SNES's lifespan. Regardless, it's critically acclaimed and adored within the hardcore community for its stern challenge and out-of-the-box mechanics. While its USPs may not have been palatable for the masses, they very much hit home for their intended audience.
The Binding Blade!
Going back to basics. No children, no skills, no holy blood, no grinding, no branched promotions, no world map, no dungeons, no explorable villages, no fun, jokes. The Binding Blade is distilled, traditional Fire Emblem on the go, with suitably streamlined gameplay and a story and cast inspired by FE1. FE6's boldly colourful art style is a good match for the GBA, and more accessible than the more subdued palette and late 90s anime stylings of the Yggdrasil games, and whatever was going on in the first 2 games, all made possible by Sachiko Wada's beautiful designs, which are iconic to the GBA era. The GBA sprite work and animations FE6 introduced are also a notable step up from This, loading the combat with visual flair. Binding Blade introduced a modded staple, the support system. Combining bond supports from FE3 with the Yggdrasil Saga's love system, compatible units can converse during maps, granting combat boosts, but also 3-part conversations that were more in depth than those found in the love system, and served to develop the playable cast, and choose who our boy Roy would treat to a sealed sword, which I guess is another USP, shipping your lord, I guess. FE6 introduced multiplayer through the Link Arena, where you could pit teams of your units against those of your friends, and an actual post-game with the trial maps, which go toward extending the game's longevity. FE6 keeps it straightforward, besides the Gaiden chapters, but gives you a little bit of everything that makes for a pretty fulfilling experience. For you guys, I guess, I'm not really a fan, but
The Blazing Blade.
the quintessential Fire Emblem experience. As the first view of Fire Emblem in the West, without electric mice, Blazing Blade is built to be marketable and accessible to newcomers. Robin may be the most popular avatar, but the OG was the dude, or dead, Mark. Mark's a blank slate that serves as the player's
Persona!
The goal here is greater integration with the cast, who often talk to you or ask for advice. Gotta hand it to them. Imagine this as your first Fire Emblem experience, waking up to the hot, badass sword lady and buddying up on a whirlwind adventure. Yeah, guy or girl, that's a strong first impression. A later game would carry that energy. Speaking of Lyn, one of FE7's biggest USPs is Lyn and Tale, the game's dedicated tutorial. FE7 is the first Fire Emblem to have one integrated into its story, another clear effort to ease new players into Fire Emblem's gameplay. The tutorial-based gameplay, charming story, character introductions, and slight self-insert fantasy in Lyn's Tale make it a potent introduction for newcomers, and the game's character-driven narrative, along with the expanded support system that allows you to marry units post-story, keeps you engaged with the cast. As a prequel to FE6, characters from Binding Blade like Eliwood, Hector, and even FE6's big bad Zephiel appear in their younger forms, and the game displays their origins, helping to pull in Japanese FE6 fans, or those of us in the West who liked Rain Smash and Mystic is Dad for him. Blazing Blade honestly has everything you want in your first Fire Emblem. A weighty story that balances politics, magic, and strong character motivation, a well-written, nuanced cast that you become intimately familiar with, classic Fire Emblem gameplay with little fat, but a smooth difficulty curve and depth to be found, crisp charming visuals, and an OST full of bangers. FE7 gracefully traverses the tightrope between welcoming newcomers and keeping vets happy. Mostly. So it's no surprise that it's one of the most beloved titles, and one of the most commonly suggested for new players.
The Sacred Stones.
Sacred Stones puts most of Gaiden's USPs on the GBA. The game's more RPG based again, with a pair of lords, in a world falling into ruin from monsters and demons, branched promotions returning, this time for almost everyone, and a group of trainee units, with their own special classes and unique promotion process, providing greater customization. As the Wonder Twins of Renee, Action Man, and Celica V2, you can roam the land of Magvel between battles on the returning world map, and stock up on supplies, or grind up in monster skirmishes. For more intensive grinding, you can access the Tower of Valny from early on, and fight increasingly powerful monster hordes for gold, treasure, and experience. Along with the warhead they call Seth, this drastically lowers the game's already mild difficulty, making it one of the more welcoming entries gameplay-wise, which is ironic, as the story goes to some pretty dark places. Yikes. Unlike the lords in Gaiden and FE4, Erika and Ephraim are together for most of the game. You choose which twin's perspective to follow, kind of like Sonic and Tails in Sonic Adventure. This significantly influences maps, story sequences, and entire characters. You'll want to play both, lending the game longevity. Speaking of longevity, Sacred Stones had some of the series' most robust post-game for its time, expanding on the Elite series trial maps with its Creature campaign. The Creature campaign has you roam the completed world map, Tower of Valny, and post-game exclusive Lacto Ruins, and recruit villains and NPCs that were unavailable during the main story. FE8 doesn't reinvent the wheel, but by borrowing from the past, it's a relatively unique experience, with a fair amount of replayability from its branching storyline and greater post-game.
Path of Radiance.
Radiant Dawn.
The Tellius games share much of their appeal, so I'll tackle them as one. Marking the series' introduction to 3D visuals, FE 9 and 10 display some of the grandest presentation we've seen. The charming but limited sprites were replaced by 3D models, more complex animations, and CG cutscenes, all underpinned by Senri Kita's gorgeous art style. Catchy chiptune made way for orchestral bombast, and the voice acting, while...
I'm nervous. What if I hit her?
The Queen's men are attacking! Stop him!
Sorry. Always last in your books. What have I said about watching your back?
Form up! Surround them all! Don't let a single one escape!
Hold on, Lucia. Everything will be fine. You're safe now. Can you hear me? Hold on!
Rough was a new development. This robust, ambitious presentation style is emblematic to the Radiant saga. Besides presentational upgrades, the games feature some interesting maneuvers. The Radiant saga features world building on the scale of the Yggdrasil saga, its two tales weaving a grand, sweeping narrative that sells the realm of Tellius as a world with a storied, murky history, treating its theme of discrimination with an even-handedness and dry realism that brings Tellius and its inhabitants alive. Bolstering this is the narrative and visual development characters make in the 3-year time skip between games. Not always positive development, mind you. The hell happened here? The combined narrative of Path of Radiance and Radiant Dawn feels weighty and complete. You can see both an extended coming-of-age story and an epic of war, racial tension, and revenge unfurl before you. Unique to Radiant Dawn is its story structure. The game split into 4 parts, each one from the perspective of a different contingent of characters, which even extends to pitting protagonists against each other, kind of like Sonic Heroes. I'd consider the protagonists' USPs too. Conceptually, Ike and Micaiah stand out as some of this series' most unique lords, especially Micaiah, being one of the series' few female lords, but more importantly, a mage lord that never once touches a sword. Once more, a mage lord that never once touches a sword. Good job, Micaiah. Gameplay-wise, a wide variety of map objectives keep things fresh, while many new features like the Lagoose mechanic, base conversations, and the return and refinement of Gaiden's bonus EXP and 3rd tier classes lend the gameplay a unique flavour. The 3rd tier classes in particular make the growth of your unit more palpable. FE 9 and 10 are all around solid, ambitious titles. Whether you're playing for story, characters, or gameplay, the Radiant saga has you covered. But not your wallet.
Shadow Dragon!
As a remake, Shadow Dragon's main appeal lies in updating FE1 with modern-ish presentation and revitalized gameplay, along with an expanded script and cast. It features a fresh localization by translation powerhouses 8.4, whose bold script breathes new life into the plot and cast. Especially Marth, the game introduced the class swap feature. This lets you change the class of any unit besides Marth and any special units before a map, opening up strategic opportunity to readapt units on the fly. This also incentivizes players to come back to the game and experiment with different unit builds. FE11 also introduced Wi-Fi multiplayer, which lets you battle your friends anywhere, a natural evolution of the GBA game's Link Arena. So there's that. Shadow Dragon reinvigorates the pretty dated original game, and as such stands out as perhaps the best way to experience the first chapter of Marth's tale, especially for us Westerners.
New mystery of the emblem.
Chris. It's Chris. Look, I didn't say the USPs had to be good.
Awakening!
Hold on, I've got a bit more. Like FE7, New Mystery features an avatar, but this time they're fully playable, with an actual portrait, customizable design, dialogue, supports with the rest of the cast, and a notable place in the game's plot, which is all I'll say. It also expands FE3's gameplay, story, and cast, like Shadow Dragon does for FE1, introducing the 7th platoon of Altean Knights, which Chris is part of. Perhaps the game's greatest USPs are what it does besides its story, gameplay, or AV presentation. The game introduced DLC, providing extra characters, maps, and other goodies. It also introduced 3 gameplay modes that became series standards for a while: Lunatic Mode, a new extreme difficulty, Classic Mode, traditional permadeath, and Casual Mode. For the first time, players could have their units not die upon defeat, and instead chill with Gordon on the bench.
But more!
Between these modes, New Mystery makes itself available to both hardcore vets and the newest of newbies, as long as they read Japanese. Sadly, that didn't help much. While not a flop, New Mystery's numbers were pretty mediocre, continuing a run of underselling that almost put the series in the dirt. Thankfully, it was saved by
Awakening!
aka USP The Game, FE1's world and lore, Gaiden's world map and RPG focus, FE4's second generation and skills, FE6's supports, FE7's avatar that's buddy-buddy with the Lord, Sacred Stones' universal branched promotions, the Radiance Saga's CG cutscenes, Shadow Dragon's reclassing, new mysteries play modes, and DLC. These all combine into one of Awakening's USPs. It refines and expands each of them to be both a love letter to the series and a wholly unique, immediately welcoming Fire Emblem experience. As the series' swan song / Hail Mary, Awakening's filled with nostalgia, stuffing its cast, story, world, and even convoy with references to characters, locations, and events from previous games. Elise is Arcanea 2,000 years in the future. The protagonist, Chrom, is a descendant of Marth. His daughter Lucina takes Marth's now legendary name for the first half of the game. Part of the game takes place in Valentia from Gaiden. Even a redesigned Tiki from the Arcanea series appears. And this guy, but we don't really talk about him. The love for the earlier games is palpable. Often praised for its charm, Awakening's basically Fire Emblem comfort food. Its stellar AV presentation, including first-rate voice acting and some of the series' best cutscenes, is an immediate visceral hook. It keeps the good feelings flowing, from its light-hearted tone and quirky, anime-inspired cast that do belie depth, to its cozy themes of changing your future and the ubiquitous power of friendship. This excerpt from Game Explain's Real Talk podcast is basically what I mean.
Now that I'm more into that kind of RPG, like strategy RPG, but at the time, it was just such a bad impression, and it kind of put me off the genre for a long time too, until Fire Emblem, which Fire Emblem Awakening was the one that got me in. Fire Emblem was just so inviting, and I am planning to pick up 3 houses, even though I skipped Fates. But it's just a nice introduction to the genre. I think a lot of it has to do with the characters and story as well, though.
The gameplay backs this up, with the pair-up system letting units pair up during combat. The new support system allows far more supports than before, while the introduction of S-supports puts marriage and kids on the table for almost everyone, including you. This is where Waifu Emblem really kicked off, as your avatar, Robin, can support and marry almost any unit in the game, even the ones you wish they couldn't. Shipping, and being able to literally marry your waifu or husbando are powerful marketing tools, which IS clearly noticed. Awakening's somewhat crude and very breakable gameplay is oddly effective, allowing new players to feel like they're being tested and growing as they learn the ropes, while letting more experienced players style on the game however they please. With the dizzying amount of character customization available through reclassing, branched promotions, pair-up, and inheritance, lending the gameplay a strangely addictive quality and accessibility. Obviously, Awakening's approach worked wonders, because just like Shakira's hips, those numbers don't lie.
Cha-ching!
Awakening was the series' best-selling game till Fates, and is one of the most critically acclaimed. Awakening's passion and heart, plus its single-minded intent on being as immediately enjoyable and satisfying as possible, makes it stand out as one of the most accessible and charming Fire Emblems. But really, Awakening's biggest USP is right there on the cover. Just playing.
Fates!
Fates doubles down on Awakening's appeal hardcore, while refining its gameplay mechanics. The avatar is taken to its logical extreme, now being the sole lord. And a dragon. They also have a choice to make. As do you. Fates comes in 3 flavors: the beginner-friendly Birthright, the more traditional demanding Conquest, and the median Revelation. This allows players to choose the kind of gameplay experience they're looking for, in order to increase accessibility. Compared to Awakening, one of the coziest games of the series, Fates shoots for moral complexity and depth in its narrative. In the midst of a long-standing war between the Japan-inspired Hoshido and the Eurocentric Nor, your lord, Korin, must decide whether to side with Kagura, their blood family in Hoshido, or the bad guys. Each path reflects a different choice. They're starkly different, from their plots, to Korin's character, to most notably, their sonic and visual aesthetic. As Hoshido is based on Japan, Birthright takes a uniquely oriental style, with a visual focus on light. Conquest, by contrast, is more traditional and based in European stylings, with a dark tone, while Revelation is visually and sonically esoteric. This lends Fates' AV presentation a distinctly eclectic quality. Hoshido and Nor have separate rosters, both filled with characters that take on anime traits like an Awakening. and also just pulling characters from Awakening. Speaking of anime traits, let's talk about one of Fates' biggest USPs. Or should I say two? I'm not even kidding this time. Do you know how many people got lit just off this shot? Crazy. It leads into one of Fates' more controversial draws. It really leans into the fan service and self-insert appeal that Awakening tapped into. The cast feel more dating sim-esque than ever, and that's not a shot. There's a notable focus among the cast on your avatar. The My Castle feature lets you customize your own home base and go there between maps. This includes features such as an armory, shop, and even prison. It culminates in the Treehouse feature, where you can bond with your allies. Think Pokemon and me, but with your sister. Or wife. Or a sister that's your wife.
I often wonder if we are growing as a people, or in fact, regressing.
IS saw major dollar signs with Awakening, and with Fates, they tried to capitalize on that with an even more ambitious direction. And, like it or loathe it, it definitely worked. I'll admit to a certain degree of sarcasm in this segment, but all jokes aside, Fates very clearly appeals to a lot of people in a lot of different ways, and there's no denying or decrying it. Shadows of Valentia. Where Gaiden's unique appeal lies mainly in gameplay, Shadows of Valentia's is more sensory. Echo sells itself from first blush with its presentation, underpinned by Hidari's sublime art style, slick UI, and first for the series, full voice acting. From cutscenes to support conversations to the new memory prisms, most dialogue is fully acted by top-tier talent. The soundtrack lovingly refurbishes the chiptunes of Gaiden with modern instrumentation. Combat is now more seamless and cinematic than ever, as units weave through crisp, almost choreographed battle sequences. The game's expanded plot and shorter but more specific supports flesh out the sidecast, including several newcomers. Speaking of, the cast is wonderfully grounded, especially compared to the more overt characters in Awakening and Fates, lending the game a comparatively mature feel among the 3DS titles. The script, provided again by 8-4, teams with charm and helps the cast and story truly come alive. The ambitious but limited plot of Gaiden is expanded to its full potential here. All these factors come together to make Shadows of Valentia perhaps the most cinematic Fire Emblem experience to date, at least at release. Echoes includes all of Gaiden's USPs and uses its platform to advance Gaiden's already avant-garde gameplay. You interact with villagers in a new point-and-click style mode, but even more impressive is the fully 3D dungeon exploring. Now you can have Ulm tap into his inner Link while he runs around smashing pots. The combat also received several updates. For example, weapons now have special skills attached to them that they can apply to the wielder when used enough, and the Miller's turn wheel mechanic allows you to bypass the hassle of resetting after a unit dies by rewinding turns during a battle. By bringing Gaiden's gameplay into the modern day and revamping it, Echoes creates a gameplay experience unlike any other in the series. Even Gaiden. Shadows of Valentia pulls the avant-garde but archaic Gaiden into the 21st century with zeal, and in doing so, cements itself as one of the most off-the-wall entries in the series.
Fire Emblem! Heroes!
I'm including Heroes because I think it introduced enough fans to be worthwhile. That said, I don't think I need to explain how Heroes sells itself. Heroes' appeal lies in 5 key factors: the accessibility of a mobile title, a simplified reimagining of typical Fire Emblem gameplay, the use of characters, music and maps from previous games to induce nostalgia in Fire Emblem fans, the use of a gacha system and daily events to keep players coming back, and most obviously, Camilla.
You can invite me over as many times as you like. I'll always be here for you.
No kidding. For real though, the liberal helping of cheesecake slathered over the game draws people in by tapping into their more primal interests. If FE7 touched on fan service and self-insertion, Awakening kicked it off and Fates leaned into it, then Heroes made like Kendrick Lamar and dove into a pool full of it. Sex totally sells, and so does Heroes. Through combining the appeal of simple but highly customizable and surprisingly deep gameplay with a healthy serving of more basic appeal, Heroes became a smash hit. Seriously, look at those damn numbers. 3 houses, aka Fire Emblem GX. Now there is a lot to go into here, but for time's sake, let's keep to the big stuff. Three Houses' school setting puts it way out there compared to the other games immediately, and spins all the typical appeal of an Avatar protagonist in a new way, by making your protagonist a literal teacher, instructing the students that will eventually become your army. The feeling of growing your unit from the ground up is more palpable than ever, like the appeal of the villages in Gaiden and the trainee unit in Sacred Stones on steroids. The freeform unit progression, increased level of micromanaging and out-of-battle activity only bolsters that. Gameplay in general has been revamped, and is a fresh, involved, tactile experience. Being on the Switch let Three Houses marry the depth of a home console title with the accessibility of a portable. Quite the USP. Like Awakening, Three Houses blends inspiration from games both old and new, while introducing new features to create a new experience. The world building and time skip is akin to the Yggdrasil and Tellius games, while the Avatar and Death support compounded what Awakening and Fate left behind. Like Fate specifically, we have a branching storyline that hinders on your choice between a set of parties, with moral greys and juicy character depth to spare. Some of Echo's combat ideas have stuck as well as the full voice acting it introduced. Meanwhile, new gameplay elements such as free roaming around Garrick Mark and combat abilities such as Gambit spice things up. The sheer length and scale of the game is of note. It took me literally 80 hours to finish my first route. For literally any other game, that would be enough time to finish it once, finish it twice, and for r/Fire Emblem to tear it a new one. This is the longest game in the series, and it's not even close. With everything else I mentioned, Three Houses is one Fire Emblem you can totally sink your teeth into. Like I said at the start, Three Houses has had a stellar first few months, and is already a critical and commercial success. Its blend of fresh, creative direction with mainstream sensibilities achieves the lofty goal of reaching a wider audience than ever, while keeping veterans and newer players alike happy, which from what I gather hasn't been seen since Blazing Blade, or perhaps Path of Radiance. If you're looking for a title with old school depth and new school accessibility, with some forward-thinking direction on top, look no further than Fire Emblem Three Houses. So what's my point here? Well, the point is this. Each game's unique appeal is wildly different, but equally valid, and illustrates both Intelligent System's willingness to take a chance, which is commendable, but also the versatility and malleability of Fire Emblem's core concept, able to be played in various ways to hit a wide range of tastes and preferences, your strategy fiends, romance lovers, weebs, and many more besides. That said, it also highlights the need for discretion, market research to keep a finger on the pulse of the zeitgeist, and strong marketing to avoid another sales slump like between Radiant Dawn and Awakening. Fire Emblem has shown it has a strong enough core appeal to build a loyal following, and the versatility to maintain and even grow it in an ever-changing market. Three Houses continues that trend, and I'm confident the series will thrive for a long time because of its rock-solid fanbase. While it's had its fumbles and close shaves, after almost 30 years, just like my boy Vague, Fire Emblem has got tenure. But still, where do we go from here, and where do we draw the line? At what point is the Fire Emblem experience no longer truly Fire Emblem? Is it necessary to switch up so drastically each time, or is there value in just giving the fans what they want? Even that's hard to pin down, with the fanbase having such split tastes. Should I take them all into account, or just focus on one voice? Maybe even try to hit them all in one game like Three Houses? Are there some tastes that perhaps don't fit what Fire Emblem is supposed to be and should be ignored? Or is the very idea of what Fire Emblem is supposed to be an archaic concept pushed by gatekeeping old heads that need to get with the times? I don't know. I'll leave that with you. Thanks a lot for watching, I hope you enjoyed this one. With this video, I really wanted to illustrate the diversity in direction that Fire Emblem has exhibited over the years. It's no secret that there's a lot of conflicting opinions in terms of what the series should and shouldn't be doing, and what are good or bad games, right or wrong moves in the series history. I'm not really down to say if your opinion on that kind of thing is right or wrong, but I will say for me personally, I like the fact that a lot of the different Fire Emblem games kind of fit different moods or tastes, I suppose. If I'm looking for a grand, epic feeling game, then I've got Radiant Dawn. If I want a fun, engaging, character-driven story, I've got FE7. If I really feel like a tricky, challenging gameplay experience, I'll boot up Conquest. If I want something chilled out and laid back and some good-hearted fun, then there's always Awakening. And if I ever tire of enjoying life, well, there's always Binding Blade. Jokes aside, the breadth of the series' direction and appeal is certainly a positive more than a negative in my opinion, and I'm glad to see that Three Houses has totally leaned into it. But yeah, now I'll turn it over to you guys. If you have anything to say, do feel free to drop it down below. It'd be cool to get some discussion out of this. I think it's a really interesting topic. Feel free to leave a like on the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you want to see more. And until the next time, I will see you later.